A double great feeling, making you realize double is the one for you.
If you were a kid in the 1970s, chances are you grew up under a very specific kind of authority. Not loud, not dramatic, just final. Rules weren't debated, they weren't explained, and they definitely weren't negotiable. Most of them came down to one phrase, because I said so. Tonight, we're going back through 20 rules every 1970s kid lived under. Number 1. Wear a coat. Temperature was irrelevant. Cold equaled sickness. End of discussion. In the 1970s, weather wasn't something you experienced. It was something that threatened you. Cold air didn't just make you uncomfortable, it made you sick. That connection was absolute and non-negotiable. Kids could insist they weren't cold, but that didn't matter. Parents had already decided. Coats were zipped, hats were pulled down, scarves were wrapped until you could barely turn your head. Comfort was secondary to prevention. You learned early that how you felt didn't outrank what adults believed. If it was chilly, you wore a coat, not because of logic, but because that's how illness was avoided, or so everyone agreed. Number 2. Don't sit so close to the TV. Distance was constantly negotiated but never correct. Every living room had an invisible line you weren't supposed to cross. Sit too close to the TV and someone would immediately notice. No one could ever say exactly what would happen if you got too close, only that it was bad for your eyes. You scooted back, then forward, then back again. The correct distance always shifted, but somehow you were always wrong. The TV itself was magnetic, especially when it was the main entertainment in the house. Being told to move back became part of the watching experience, as regular as commercials. Number 3. You'll ruin your eyes reading in the dark. Flashlights were treated like contraband. Reading after bedtime felt dangerous, not just because you might get caught, but because it was supposedly harmful. Dim light wasn't cozy, it was a threat to your eyesight. Kids hid under blankets with flashlights, trying to angle the beam just right. Parents would catch the glow and shut it down immediately. The message was clear: curiosity had consequences. No one explained how or why reading in low light caused damage. It just did, and that was enough. Number 4. Stop making that face. It'll freeze that way. Permanent disfigurement was always one expression away. This warning came out whenever kids made silly faces, crossed their eyes, or exaggerated expressions. It was said casually, but the implication was serious. Somewhere between humor and fear, kids absorbed the idea that their own faces could betray them, that one wrong move could become permanent. It didn't need to make sense. It only needed to be believed. And most kids did believe it. Why risk it? Number 5. Finish everything on your plate. Hunger elsewhere meant obedience here. Meals were about more than food. They were about responsibility. You were reminded often that there were children somewhere who didn't have enough to eat. That knowledge translated into one rule: you finish what's on your plate. Liking it wasn't required. Asking for less wasn't encouraged. Leaving food behind was disrespectful. You learned to eat past fullness, to clear plates out of obligation. It wasn't framed as punishment. It was framed as character building. Number 6. Don't swallow your gum.
A double pleasure's waiting for you. A double pleasure from Double Mint Gum. A double great feeling, making you realize double is the one for you.
7 years. No one knew why. Everyone believed it. This rule came with a timeline which made it feel official. Swallowing gum didn't just cause a problem. It caused a 7-year problem.
Hey, kids, here's chewing fun. My fruits are regular and boredom. Both have stripes and lots of fun with different flavors for everyone.
Regular is fun. Let's try bubblegum.
Sure, there's a whole herd of flavors in my fruits drive bubblegum. 4 delicious flavors, great bubble fun.
No adult could explain what actually happened during those 7 years. The gum just stayed somewhere, waiting. Kids accepted this completely. The number was specific enough to feel scientific, and that was all the proof required. Once you heard it, the fear stuck. Chewing gum became a responsibility, not a treat. Number 7. You can't go out with wet hair. instant illness. Science backed by vibes only. Wet hair in cold air was treated like a guaranteed path to sickness. It didn't matter how briefly you were going outside. It only mattered that your hair was damp. Kids were stopped at the door, towels were reapplied, hair dryers deployed. The idea that hair alone could invite illness was never questioned. The logic wasn't discussed. The outcome was assumed. You didn't test it, you waited. No one wanted to be proved right. Number 8. Drink your milk. It's good for you.
As the years go by in her growing life, she'll always look to milk.
Drink milk for all it's worth.
Just one more glass a day.
Warm, foamy, unavoidable. Milk wasn't optional. It appeared with meals whether you wanted it or not. You were told it made you strong, helped you grow, and kept your bones healthy. Sometimes it was warm, sometimes it had that unmistakable skin on top. Complaints didn't change anything. You drank it because that's what kids did. Milk was less a beverage and more a rule, one that came in a glass. Number 9. Respect your elders. Even when they were wrong. Especially when they were wrong. Respect wasn't something adults earned. It was something kids owed. Age alone granted authority. Questioning adults was seen as rude, even if you were right. The lesson wasn't about kindness, it was about hierarchy. Older meant correct. Kids learned quickly when to stay quiet. Respect wasn't a conversation, it was compliance. Number 10. Because I said so. The final answer, no appeals allowed. This phrase ended all discussions. It didn't explain anything, and it wasn't meant to. Once it was said, the topic was closed. There was no arguing, no reasoning, no follow-up questions. Authority didn't require justification. Kids learned that not everything came with an explanation. Some rules existed simply because someone older decided they did. If these deep dives into everyday nostalgia feel familiar to you, make sure you're subscribed here on YouTube. And if you're on Facebook, come join our growing nostalgia community there. It's full of shared memories, stories, and people who lived through the same rules. Number 11. Stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. Emotions were negotiable, silence was preferred. This phrase taught kids quickly that feelings had limits. Crying wasn't seen as communication, it was something to be corrected. The warning usually came fast before anyone asked why you were upset. The message was clear. Strong emotions made adults uncomfortable, and calming down was your responsibility. Kids learned to swallow tears, to stay quiet, to manage disappointment internally. Emotional control wasn't discussed, it was enforced. Number 12. Don't waste food. Even if it was cold, even if you hated it. Food waste wasn't just discouraged, it was moral failure. Leaving food behind meant you didn't appreciate what you had. This rule followed kids through every meal. You scraped plates clean, even when the food was overcooked, underseasoned, or completely unappealing. Complaints were met with reminders about sacrifice and scarcity. You didn't eat for enjoyment, you ate to finish. Number 13. Company's coming. Act normal. Normal meant invisible. Before guests arrived, kids were reminded to behave. That usually meant staying out of the way. Act normal didn't come with instructions, but everyone knew what it meant. No noise, no interruptions, no embarrassing stories. Kids became background furniture while adults talked. You learned how to make yourself smaller, not because you were doing something wrong, but because presence alone could be disruptive. Number 14. You're not bored, you're being dramatic. Boredom was a character flaw. Boredom wasn't acknowledged as a feeling. It was treated like exaggeration or laziness. If kids complained, they were told to find something to do. Entertainment wasn't provided. Imagination was expected. Saying you were bored suggested something was wrong with you, not the situation. So kids learned to stay busy, even if they weren't enjoying it. Being occupied mattered more than being entertained. Number 15. Go play outside. No supervision, no helmets, be back before dark. Being sent outside wasn't a suggestion, it was a solution. If kids were loud, restless, or bored, the answer was always the same. Go outside. No plan was required, no adults followed. You figured it out as you went. Sidewalks became racetracks, yards became kingdoms, scraped knees were expected, not alarming. The only real rule was timing. When the streetlights came on, you were supposed to be heading home. Until then, you were on your own. Number 16. Don't touch the thermostat. It was sacred and expensive, somehow. The thermostat was treated like a forbidden object. Kids were warned not to touch it under any circumstances, as if it were connected directly to the family bank account. No one explained how it worked, only that changing it even 1 degree could cost money. Parents could adjust it freely, but if a child even hovered nearby, suspicion followed. You learned early that comfort had a price, and kids weren't allowed to decide it. Number 17. That costs money. Usually said while holding a cigarette. Requests were met with reminders of cost. Even small things were framed as expensive. Kids learned early that wants were secondary to budgets, even if the logic wasn't always consistent. Number 18. Eat what's there or don't eat. Options were not part of the system. Meals were final. There was no backup plan, no alternate dish, no special requests. If you didn't like what was served, the solution wasn't negotiation. It was hunger. This rule taught kids quickly that resistance had consequences. You ate foods you didn't like because the alternative was worse. It wasn't cruel. It was practical and completely unquestioned. Number 19. You'll understand when you're older. You never got an explanation, just a delay. Questions were answered with promises of future understanding. The explanation never came, just time. Now I want to hear from you. Which rule did you grow up with that still sticks with you today? Drop it in the comments. Your memories are half the story. Number 20. That's how it's always been done. Tradition beat logic every time. This rule justified everything. It didn't need reason. History was enough. These rules weren't written down, but everyone knew them. They shaped childhood, family life, and how authority worked. Looking back now, some feel ridiculous, some feel harsh, and some probably kept us alive. They didn't come with explanations, just expectations, and somehow we all understood.